Welcome to the Big Mountain College Football Podcast, where we give you a fresh take on college football betting focused on the Big Ten and the Mountain West.
I'm JY, and this is my good friend Steve. And in this episode, we're going to be focusing on conference realignment and expansion. I want to get Steve's take on what he's thinking with the Big Ten, what he's thinking with the Pac12. I'll give you a little bit of the information where I'm feeling I'm at with the Mountain West. Because I don't want anyone messing with the Mountain West. I was a little worried not too long ago that Mountain West may be gone, and that broke my heart. But I think we're in a good place right now. So let's start with Steve. And just as a reminder before we get there, if you like what we're doing here, make sure you hit our like button. Throw some comments down. We'd love to hear what you're thinking on this as well. And maybe our second video on this, we can incorporate some comments. And hit the subscribe button so you know when we're going to be doing more videos like this. So now that that's out of the way, Steve, how are we feeling here? What are we thinking about the Big Ten and the realignment, the expansion, and everything that's been going on?
Well, so let's review the last year or so of Big Ten expansion and how that's affected everything. So first of all, as you know, a little over a year ago, the Big Ten went ahead and added USC and UCLA.
Yep, big news.
Big news, added a big market to the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
It was huge news, and it came not too many months on the heels of the Big Ten and the Pac12 signing a like cooperation agreement, basically that they were going to help each other and not and not pick each other's pockets. Then the Big Ten went ahead and snagged their top two teams basically in their biggest market. So then we had about a year or so of things not changing too much, but then recently. Big 12 invited first Colorado, and they called them the Four Corner Schools. Colorado first, and then Arizona State, and Utah. And so in response to that, and I actually think from the contacts I have at Penn State, they weren't expecting any more Big Ten expansion. But when that happened, Big Ten went ahead and snagged Oregon and Washington at kind of a discount price. So they're calling Oregon the discount Ducks now, which I got a kick out of that.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. So,
well, and if I may add, I'm wearing a Jeep shirt.
Oh, there you go.
And I know all about ducks.
We
got ducks all over the place.
Right.
They're discount ducks.
Yes.
So anyway, I had to throw that in there. Yeah. Beep, beep. All right. Back to where we were.
So, basically, that's a seismic shift in college football.
Yeah.
The Pac-12, is now the Pac-4. All they have left is Stanford, and Cal kind of there together,
right? And
then Washington State and Oregon State together up there in the top corner, and they're wondering what they're going to do next. There was some talk that maybe the Pac-12 would go ahead and raid the Mountain West,
right?
But the biggest issue with that is if they add those teams from the Mountain West, basically those teams are going to be assuming the debt that the Pac-12 has. Pac-12 is $50 million in debt to Comcast due to some overpayments and maybe some, we'll call them shady accounting practices.
That never happens.
Right. So why do those Mountain West teams want to go over and assume $50 million in debt when the Pac-12 couldn't even sign a media deal to pay for that when they had all their other teams? So that's kind of where we're at. Now, one thing I will say, before we move on to the thoughts on the Pac-12 and how it affects the Mountain West, just want to with the Big Ten, my contacts at Penn State say they don't expect any more expansion anytime soon in the next year or so. There was some rumblings about Florida State. They had until August 15th to leave the ACC, and there's some people who are connected to Florida State that were thinking that move was imminent. But my contacts say nothing is imminent. At least it's going to be a couple years down the road, maybe as far as 2036 when the ACC grant of rights expires. Yeah, they're a pretty rock solid contract.
Yeah.
Depending on who you talk to.
Yeah.
But I will say those contacts do tell me that when the time comes, the top targets for the Big Ten, first one obviously is going to be Notre Dame. That's the prize that everybody wants.
Right.
I'm personally not a big fan of Notre Dame.
Sure.
But they draw the eyeballs.
Yes, they
it's
do.
a huge program.
Yep.
Be a huge pickup for the Big Ten.
Yep.
So that's the easy one, Notre Dame. Florida State is the second target. That's an obvious one. Florida State is dying to get out of the ACC and either go to the SEC or the Big Ten. Again, depending on who you talk to.
Right.
They do meet that academic profile for the most part. However, they're not AAU members right now. And every Big Ten member that has joined since 1955, Michigan State was the last Big Ten program that was invited that was not an AAU member.
Oh, okay.
So I do think Florida State, though, is a target. Hopefully they get that AAU membership. And then the third one that people don't talk about as often, which I think is a big brand, a big name, is UNC, the Tar Heels.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is a huge brand for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Imagine adding them their brand power.
Yes.
You know, they're one of they're Michael Jordan went there. They're one of the Air Jordan schools. So they would come in and be another Air Jordan school along with Michigan. That's huge for branding.
Yep.
Huge for marketing. You know, the Big Ten wants to move down that I-95 corridor.
Okay.
Those growing southeastern markets. So those are the targets for the Big Ten. But all of my contacts say it's going to come. It's not happening anytime soon. Again, probably closer to 2030 than 2025.
Okay.
But I will keep you guys updated. I will keep our audience updated if I do hear any new changes on that. But for now, for you and I, focused on the Big Ten and Mountain West, all those things we talked about, and potentially with the Pac-12 and the Mountain West. How are you feeling about that? As I know you're a huge Mountain West fan. So what are your thoughts?
I am, and you know, you brought up some good points there. I do want to go back a little bit as well. And so the news out of the Mountain West just not too long ago was that San Diego State was going to be pulling out of the Mountain West. They were looking to go to the Pac-12, but an offer never materialized. So that kind of fell apart. Like when I first heard the news, I heard that it was kind of a done deal almost. Like it's happening. Like they're gone. And then it petered out. And, you know, you kind of wonder the true timing of all of this and how all that actually played out because, you know, what's made public is clearly well after the inner workings of these universities and the conferences and things like that. So maybe, you know, looking back, that may have been the beginning of like, what's going on here with Pac-12? I don't know if it is or not.
I agree with you.
Purely speculation, but it is interesting how that kind of played out. So anyway, San Diego State now is in the mountain, staying in the Mountain West. They didn't get an offer. You know, kind of. I could calm down a little bit that wasn't going to happen because in my opinion, San Diego State is one of the bigger schools in terms of, again, all the power and who they are. They do have a little bit of a national name, like the Boise State team does as well. Some of the teams not nearly as much, but San Diego State's one of the more powerful teams in that conference.
And they're in that Southern California market.
And they're in the Southern California market. So, you know, you brought up the debt piece with the Pac-12, and right now, Mountain West schools make $4 million annually. With their current agreement, they have 3 years left on that agreement, and so probably in about 2 years, they'll start talking about that again, going to market, and timing for that could be great. You know, depending on what happens here specifically with Oregon State and Washington State, you know, if they pull those two schools into the Mountain West, that's really, you know, I've been hearing some of the things that's been coming out of the Mountain West and the commissioner and things, and that's the bread and butter. That's where they want to be. They would love to add 2 more teams.
Absolutely.
And potentially then, if the Pac-12 does completely go away, which it looks like it likely will be, you know, the Mountain West is now your premier conference on the West Coast.
Absolutely.
There's nobody else out. I mean, the schools are in different conferences, but to be a purely West Coast conference, that's the Mountain West. There's nobody else out there.
Yep.
So it seems like the stars are aligning pretty well for the Mountain West right now. So from being a bit concerned, maybe a year ago, I can't exactly remember when the whole San Diego State first came out, up until now, it seems like things are moving in a positive way. I do think Oregon State and Washington State both make sense for the Mountain West. I mean, Oregon State's been playing Mountain West teams, and Washington State have been playing Mountain West teams. A lot of the Pac-12 has been playing Mountain West teams, again, because of the West Coast side of things. They're not traveling. So there's been a lot of similarities there in terms of teams playing each other. Last year, things didn't necessarily go the Mountain West way if you look at the results.
Yeah.
But 2 years ago, they were 5-5 against the Pac-12. So, you know, I think it only will raise that conference to a better level. And I think it'd be really, really interesting to see what would really actually happen if those two schools came. Now, I will say the Mountain West just met with Washington State. It was earlier in the week. It wasn't more than a few days ago.
Very recently, yeah.
And they did have the ACC join that as well. I don't know if the ACC's wanting them to have there. If they did that just out of hey, let's kind of broaden our net just to keep the Mountain West maybe, you know, up to par here. You know, who knows why that happened. It doesn't quite make sense for one team out in Washington to be with the ACC, but yeah, who knows? I don't know the reasoning behind that, but in my opinion, I like the way things are headed for the Mountain West. I think it opens up a lot of positive ongoings for the conference, and also to raise that level of play. So I'm excited for it.
You make a lot of great points, and I agree with everything you said. I think that San Diego State, the rumor mill kind of got moving a year ago when the Pac-12 lost USC and UCLA, and they were thinking, okay, how could we get back in that Southern California market? Because that's so important to the Pac-12 and their brand. So that was one of the options. And then I actually, up until maybe about a month ago, there were rumors that the Big 12 was also interested in San Diego State, and it almost seemed like there was like a bidding war. I think San Diego State even went as far as writing a letter to notify the conference that they were intending to leave, and then just the air went out of the balloon of the Pac-12, and that ended up being a great thing for the Mountain West.
Yes, it did. 100%. Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to mention that I didn't, they are saying that we should be hearing in the coming weeks, I would say in September probably, where things are going to be at with Washington State and Oregon State. So I don't think this is going to be something that's ongoing here for another year. I think they're going to try to get this wrapped up if they can with the Mountain West here in a couple weeks.
Totally agree, and I don't. It doesn't make any sense for me for Oregon State and Washington State to play in the ACC. I'm sure they're probably trying to keep their options open for a Power 5 conference to maybe get a bigger paycheck.
Sure.
But with the Mountain West, like you mentioned, their contract is coming up soon. If they could add those two pieces, I think that would make them much more attractive to their media partners to get a bigger contract. And let's be honest, Oregon State and Washington State, they would have much more stability in the Mountain West than they've had in the Pac-12. I mean, they're playing musical chairs, and everybody else just walked out of the gym, and they're like, "Hey, I got a chair still. There's more chairs for you guys." And
where'd all my playmates go?
Exactly,
they all left us.
Yeah, so I'm with you. I think that the recent news, because we were both worried about the Mountain West there for a while, but I think the recent news is a great sign for the Mountain West. I'd love to see them add those two teams, and so I'm excited about the future. So the last thing I'll say on conference realignment and Big Ten expansion is I'm going to keep my ear to the ground. If I do hear any news, I will, like I mentioned earlier, we'll bring that to our audience. You and I are talking about it constantly. It's something that's on our mind. We want to keep our audience updated with that news. So that's it for me. You want to bring us home?
Absolutely. Well, we want to thank you again for tuning in. Hopefully you found this useful information. Again, subscribe. We're going to be doing more expansion and realignment videos coming up. And as you know, we will always be doing our weekly picks. So week 1 is going to be coming up here in a day or two. So subscribe so you get notification on that. And we'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.